Me to do it, or
I
are
I already did, but I'd like to give a heads up beforehand.
all right, great. So everyone, watch your language and don't talk about anyone because it's being recorded. I'm glad everyone laughed. Well, a couple of you did anyway. So Lashon Hara, evil speech, gossip, defamation, slander, libel. It's all falls into a category of evil speech. So we're going to talk a lot about that and a couple other things tonight. So I wanted to remind everyone that the Chofetz Chaim was Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, and that was his nickname, the Chofetz Chaim, because in this verse of Psalm 34, it says, "Who wants to live a long life? Who wants to be a good person? Keep your lips from talking evil and your tongue from speaking guile. Don't talk Lashon Hara. You'll live a good life. You'll live a long life. If you want to seek peace and pursue it and have a long life, don't talk gossip." So Chafetz Chaim, who seeks or wants a long life, and that became his namaker. That became his name, the Chafetz Chaim, and he made it his lifelong endeavor to whatever he can to keep people from talking Lashon Hara. And it doesn't matter if it's false speech, libel, slander, even if it's true or not true. It's Lashon Hara, and we should do our best not to pursue it. This is only in Israel do you have a campaign against Lashon Hara. This is on the side of a bus, and it says, gossip. It doesn't speak to me. It's a nuance in the Hebrew. Ahuva actually corrected my understanding of the term. As a native Israeli, she understood it better, because like Lashon Hara, let's not even go there. Can you imagine, though, there are people in America, anyone care about, would you ever see a campaign against Lashon Hara in America? This is one of the famous discussions about the Lashon Hara. Where does Lashon Hara occur in the Bible? The verse relates that Moshe went out to his brothers after growing up in Pharaoh's household, and he saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite slave. And he looked here and there, and he saw that there was no man, and he smote the Egyptian. So that's from Exodus chapter 2, verse 12. Subsequently, Moshe went out on the second day, and he saw two Jews fighting, and he asked one, the aggressor, "Why are you hitting your fellow Jew?" To which the accused asked, "Who made you an officer and judge over us? Are you going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian yesterday?" The Pasuk then says that Moshe was very fearful, and he said, "So now the matter is known." And what did Moshe do? If Moshe, he ran away. So the question is, if Moshe looked and there weren't any people, it says, "Vayichin ko v'ko," he looked to the left, he looked to the right, when the Jew was getting beaten up by the Egyptian, and there were no witnesses. There was no one there. No one was helping him. So what did he do? He killed the Egyptian. Well, if there were no witnesses, how did this Jew know that he killed the Egyptian yesterday? And the answer is Lashon Hara. The victim told everyone what he did, what Moshe did. So it's really interesting about this is that says that's why Moshe was afraid. If we're talking Lashon Hara about ourselves, if you're talking Lashon Hara about people that help you, oh boy, are we in dire straits. I see there's a question. Can Pikuach Nefesh ever apply as an exception to Lashon Hara to save someone's life if you overhear someone saying that they will be doing harm or something bad against a person and you inform the victim, someone you overheard it? And the answer is correct. Then if you don't do something, you are actually an accessory to murder. So yes, that is an override to Lashon Hara. Excellent question. Oh, I love the questions. Okay. Where else is there famous cases of Lashon Hara? And the answer is probably the most famous case of Lashon Hara is Miriam and Aaron spoke against their two brother and sisters. They spoke Lashon Hara against Moshe. Why? This is what it says. Because of the Cushite woman. That means he took a woman from Ethiopia. She was black. And God said, "How then did you shrink from speaking against my servant Moses?" As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam stricken with snow white scales. When Aaron turned toward Miriam, he saw that she was stricken with leprosy. The punishment for talking gossip is that you would get leprosy. So The rabbis explain why, and the answer is because one of the reasons why a lot of people gossip is so that they look better than another. I'm better than him. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what they did? Oh, look. So there's two ways to get better, to better yourself. One is to excel by your own deeds, or cut everyone else off at the ankles or the knees, so to speak. So what happens is, if you're trying to make yourself look better, what's the punishment by talking Lashon Hara? Then you get this horrible skin disease that you have to cover your face and your body to hide yourself. It's measure for measure. Other examples of Lashon Hara in the Torah. The snake slandered God to Eve when convincing her to eat of the tree of knowledge. Joseph spoke negatively to his father, very famous. He talked about his brothers eating a live calf and not slaughtering it. Moshe wondered why the Jews deserved their difficult slavery in Egypt. When he heard that there were talebearers amongst them, he said that he had then understood why they deserved their fate. Doeg, King Saul's chief shepherd and the head of the Sanhedrin, caused a massacre of nearly an entire city of Kohanim. The armies of King Shaul lost their battles with the Philistines because of the slander people spoke against the future King David, all just from the book of Shmuel. The army of King Achab were successful in battle despite being idolaters because they did not practice the sin of Lashon Hara. So we see these are examples. In the last one, in the Talmud, it's discussed that when Jews slandered other Jews, they actually brought about the destruction of the second temple. So we see that the rabbis read between the lines, or actual stories of Lashon Hara, of gossiping in the Torah, brought about tremendous bad things to the people of Israel. To continue with the next one, we're still doing a basic review of the previous class. This is a very famous story. I'm going to, instead of reading it, I'm just going to tell you the story, that a man felt bad about his gossiping, and he went to the Rabbi. He said, Rabbi, how do I atone? He said, do you have a down pillow? And he goes, absolutely. Go to the tallest tower in the village, go to the top of the tower, cut open the pillow, and let all the feathers get blown away by the wind. He does it. He comes back to the Rabbi and goes, now what, Rabbi? He goes, now collect all the feathers. So that's impossible. He goes, yeah, that's what Lashon Hara is. You've talked words of gossip, and now, like feathers blown to the wind, it's impossible. That's how hard it is. So it's a very famous story about how the dangers of gossip. Don't be a talebearer amongst your people. This is a quotation from the Torah, from Leviticus. Lo telech rachil ba'mecha, lo tamad al dam re'echa ani Hashem. The classic teaching of leprosy in Parshat Mitzorah is that the affliction is a punishment for gossip or evil speech. Miriam was so afflicted after speaking negatively about her brother. Now I'm going to teach you some gematria, hidden meanings of the letters. The gematria of Nega Tzara'at, which means the plague of leprosy, if you add up the letters, it comes out to exactly 883. If you take the verse, Lo telech rachil b'mecha, don't be a gossiper among your people. Guess what the numeric value is? I did the math. It is correct. The word for leprosy, the plague for leprosy, is the same gematria as the whole verse of warning us not to gossip. In addition to that, how do you fix it? Because in Judaism, the way you broke it is the way that you fix it. It has to be measure for measure, like for an eye for an eye. Midot tovot means being menschlich, having good personality traits. And the gematria of midot tovot, 883. And lastly, if we can all learn to avoid Lashon Hara, its punishment is, by developing good traits. Tisku legula shlema, then you will be worthy of a complete redemption. 883. So this number, 883, is proven to not only be the negative words of leprosy and the negative words, don't be a gossiper, but it also, 883, is the way that the cure is having good personality, 883, and be worthy of being redeemed, the Messiah coming, 883. What a coincidence. Now, when a person during the biblical times and during the times of the temple, If you were found to have leprosy, you went to a Kohen. Now that's right away. Kohen is in charge of spiritual things, not medical things, because this wasn't a medical affliction. Leprosy was not caused by a virus. It was caused by evil speech. And that's why you went to a Kohen. So what happens is the Kohen examined you and he set you aside for 7 days. And if you got better, if you went to 30, when you kept on going through a ritual of being examined by a priest, by a Kohen. If the priest sees that the leper has been healed of the scaly affliction, the priest shall order 2 live birds, cedar wood, crimson wool, and hyssop. And they would put it into the water, and they would spritz it on the person who was ritually impure. And by the way, they shaved every bit of hair off the guilty person. And on the 7th day, they would spritz him with this water, and he would become ritually pure. So the real question is, what was the ingredients? The ingredients were supposed to constantly remind us that a cedar tree is the equivalent of like a redwood. In Lebanon, the cedars grow to approximately 200 feet, like a 30-story building. They're extremely tall. And when you talk gossip, you think you're better, you're taller than everyone else. In reality, you're hyssop. And hyssop is a ground cover. It's a plant that grows only about 2 inches above the ground. So you think you're going to be really tall and better, you're actually very, very low. And crimson comes from Tola'at Shani. Tola'at is a worm, and it came from the red. It was a worm that was used for making dyes. And even today, red dye 2 through 6 is made through the carapace, the shell of a bug. So even in ancient times, so the whole idea is like, you're a lowly bug for talking gossip. And why birds? 1 bird was set free, and 1 bird was slaughtered and used as part of the ritual. Why 2 birds? And the answer is chatterbox, talking, crazy talking. In fact, that's why it's called tweeting. Twitter is because useless, stupid talking. And it all ties in ritually is to remind us how bad gossip is. You are what you speak. So Rabbi Kalman Pakas of blessed memory taught this to me. He had it in one of his Shabbat weekly faxes. This is what Rambam, first I want to share with you. Rambam, Maimonides, wrote to his son, "Know that God graced his children with the power of speech in his love for them over all the other creatures. It enables one to become wise, to praise and glorify God, and to tell of his wonders with one's speech and mouth. It is unthinkable that a person should substitute good with bad, and to speak vulgar language, or lies, or slander, empty words, or to not keep one's word. These are astonishing sins which enslave the soul to the body. One should, in fact, be enslaving one's body to his soul. This is the key to his freedom both in this world and in the world to come, in the next world." So the idea is in Judaism, what differentiates us from all of other God's creations? And we have the power of speech. And the power of speech can be used to teach, to praise, to honor, or to warn someone of something bad about to happen. Hey, watch it, there's a truck coming, right? You can use your word for good things, or you can use your words for bad things. And Maimonides is basically warning his son about this danger. So the next is the quote from Gandhi that Rabbi Kalman Pakas of blessed memory shared. And he really made a difference to me. It had to be over 25 years ago. Your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So your thoughts and your words, that's where it all starts. And that's why if we guard our words, we will be actually preventing bad actions, which won't become bad habits, which will keep our values spiritual, and then we'll have a positive destiny. Purity of speech in the Torah. In the Torah portion of Noach, When God instructs Noah to gather all the animals into the ark, God describes the non-kosher animals as habehema asher enena tehora, and the beasts that are not clean. He doesn't say the dirty animals. He says the ones that are not clean. He doesn't call them treif, unkosher. He says the ones are, there's a difference in nuance. The Talmud points out that Torah uses 8 extra letters in this description. It could have said habehema hatme'ah. He could have said the impure animals. The reason the Torah chose not to say not tahor, impure, rather than tameh, is to teach an important lesson. We shouldn't use speech that is, we should use positive speech. Yes. By the way, someone always corrected me when I was a younger rabbi, that a lot of times, oh, that person's a dog. No, they're not. Dogs are loyal. Oh, that person's a pig. That's, it's not accurate. Actually, pigs can be remarkably clean. It's when they live in certain environments that they do have to wallow in the mud because they have very thin skin and it's very pink and they get sunburned and it's painful. But they're animals, so we shouldn't use their characteristics of God's creations as a negative moniker for them. The Torah continues, if there's any among you a man who is unclean instead of dirty, right? The Torah went out of its way to use extra letters rather than to use negative speech. Instead of saying tamehu, instead of saying he is impure, the Torah is just using an extra 16 letters to say he's just not so clean. He's, pure. He's not so pure. It's not that he's impure. He's just not pure. I remember, I think I taught it last time, and I teach it many times in the year, that the Lubavitcher Rebbe did not allow negative words, negative phrases. So, for example, the most famous one is actually in Rabbi Telushkin's book, in which the title is called Rabbi. He tells that the Rebbe once interrupted so-and-so and came to him and was talking to him about building a building, and he needed a blessing from the Rebbe and advice because the deadline was rapidly approaching. And the Rebbe interrupted him and said, don't say deadline, say due date. The same exact connotation, but deadline means if you don't make it, you're dead. Due date means when you give birth, when something good happens. The Rebbe also didn't use in Hebrew, he wouldn't let people say Beit Cholim, which means a house of sick people, a hospital. He called it a Beit Trufot, which means a place of healing. So, by the way, it's proper in Hebrew, the word for a clinic is a mirpa'ah, which comes from the Hebrew word rofeh, which means to heal. So the Rebbe wanted us to be positive and not be negative. And this is all forms of gossip and slander and negative speech. There are 10 practical guides for positive speech. 1, do not express damaging or derogatory information about anyone, even if it's true and deserved. Promote people's well-being. When in doubt, don't speak out. Humor is great, but jokes can be at someone else's expense. I have to tell you, there were a number of comedians when I was growing up that I really, really did not like. And unfortunately, many of them were Jewish. And oh my gosh, this is what happens at night after a long day. I forgot his name. He was Jewish, he was bald. Don Rickles. A lot of what he did in front of people was negative. First of all, I didn't even find it humorous, and I found it, at the expense of other people. Be kind to yourself. Speaking badly even about yourself is unethical. Self-deprecating humor is included in Lashon Hara. Last week, the week before, I told you the story that the Chofetz Chaim was on a train going home, and he was sitting in a booth in the train, and they started a conversation, one Jew to another. The guy didn't know it was the Chofetz Chaim. And he said, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to see the Chofetz Chaim. He lives in the city of Radin. Have you met him? He goes, because he's the greatest rabbi. And the Chofetz Chaim about himself said, he's not so special. And the man got so insulted, so angry, because it was the Chofetz Chaim, the great rabbi, that he slapped him. He didn't know he was the Chofetz Chaim. And he stormed out of he didn't even want to sit with that man anymore. And he stormed out of the room. And when he gets to the Radin, he checks into a hotel and he goes for his appointment with the Rebbe, with the Chofetz Chaim. And he walks into the room and he goes, "Oh my God, it's the man I slapped." And he begged forgiveness. And the Chofetz Chaim said, "No, you taught me an important lesson. You're not even allowed to talk Lashon Hara about yourself." Don't listen to gossip, number 5. If you can't change the direction of the conversation, it's advisable to leave. So I'm going to tell you again, I told it last time and I'm going to tell it again. In fact, I'm going to stop the share. I was with a group of rabbis at a biennial convention of United Synagogue, and I had not officially met Rabbi Irving Lehrman, who was the rabbi of Temple Emmanuel. Excuse me, I was still the rabbi in Asheville, and someone said to me, it was Randy Konigsberg and Ed Farber and a couple other rabbis, and he said, "Come on, let's go say hello to Rabbi Lehrman." So we all went over and introduced everyone, and one of the rabbis, it wasn't Rabbi Farber and it wasn't Randy Konigsberg, it was one of the other rabbis, goes, "Rabbi Lehrman, can you tell us opinion? I'm sure you heard that Rabbi so-and-so, what Rabbi so-and-so did, and it was really, what are your opinions?" Now let me tell you what the rabbi in question did. He was looking for a job. He interviewed at one synagogue, accepted the position, interviewed at another synagogue, got a better job by using the first contract against them, went to a third synagogue interview, got a better job, and then called the first 2 synagogues and told them, "Sorry, I changed my mind." And he did it the night before the convention. They were all there. So it was a big scandal. So what happens is one of the rabbis turns to Rabbi Lehrman of blessed memory. "Rabbi, what's your opinion?" So Rabbi Lehrman said, if you remember, if any of you knew him, he had this really baritone voice, almost like a thespian actor when he would talk. And he would say, "It reminds me of a story in the Talmud." And he told us this beautiful story. And he goes, "Will you excuse me, gentlemen? I see someone I must say hello to." And he walked away. And one of us was like, "What was that? That had nothing to do with what they're about." He goes, "Don't you know what he just did? Rather than talk Lashon Hara, he changed the subject. Rather than talk bad about a colleague, he was trying to teach us, don't talk Lashon Hara." Did the rabbi do it? Oh yeah, he did it. Does that mean we have the right to gossip about it? No. It's a very important lesson. So let's get back to number 5 on the share. Okay. If you inadvertently hear damaging information, you should believe that it is not true. Always give others the benefit of the doubt and focus on the positive. I'll give you an example. Last night, was it last night already? I'm getting my days mixed up. Yes, last night, Elon Musk, in his enthusiasm, as he was at the inauguration, he tapped he said, "I love you all," and he went like that. And if you saw listen, a number of rabbis came out in his defense because a number of people accused him of doing Sieg Heil, a Hitler salute. So first of all, for months and months and months, he was wearing a yellow ribbon wherever he went for the hostages. He's gone to Israel. He's very pro-Israel. And when he was a young man, he dated a Jewish woman. He is not an anti-Semite. And negative people want not to give him the benefit of the doubt, because then he repeated it. He turned to the side and he turned around and he goes, "I love you all." He didn't say the words, but that was his idea. He tapped his heart and he pointed with his hand raised to all of them. And it became they're condemning him, and he did apologize because that wasn't my intention. People want to focus on the negative. Words spoken can't be erased. Think before you speak, especially if you're angry, hurt, or jealous. Use kind and supportive words with your children and your spouse whenever possible. Harsh words can cause irreparable harm, as can speaking derogatorily to others about the ones you love most. It is not only permitted but required to warn a person about potential harm. For example, that a potential business partner has a repeated record of embezzlement. Okay, so I'm going to stop it, and because I remember I told you what happened at Temple Menorah close to, many years ago, at least 25 years ago. A A teacher stole $100 from another teacher. We had a number of items that were being stolen from classrooms. And one morning, a teacher came to me and said, Rabbi, this morning I had a $100 bill. My husband gave me a $100 bill. I had a $100 and a 20 and a 5 or whatever in singles. And my pocketbook never left my sight except in the classroom. I took the kids downstairs while my teaching aide stayed in the class. After a half hour playing with the kids outside, I brought them back up into the classroom, and I noticed that my purse had been moved. I opened it up, and the $100 bill was missing. And there's no doubt in my mind that she stole it. And I said to the person, bring me your purse. She brought me the purse. I wrapped it in plastic, like in saran wrap. And then I had the teacher brought in, and I confronted her, and I said, when you applied for your job here, the federal law is that you have to get your fingerprints. We have your fingerprints on file. I'm going to call the police because numerous items have gone missing over the last 3-4 months. A television, a video player, and a boom box, all kinds of stuff. And you have two choices: admit to it, give back the $100, and resign, or I will call the police. We don't have to take your fingerprints. You gave us your fingerprints. We have your fingerprints. We will then have you arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So she didn't even start crying. She just started giving excuses. And we walked her back to her room. We took her keys and she left. Now, what happens? Can you believe it? A couple months later, I get a phone call from a Jewish institution. She used me as a reference, applying for a job. So I spoke with Rabbi Yochanan Zweig, the great Rosh Yeshiva of the community, one of the greatest rabbinic minds of our generation, right here at the Talmudic University on Arthur Godfrey Road. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of hot tea. And he taught it's what your motivation is. If my attitude is, she stole hundreds and hundreds of dollars from the synagogue and from that other teacher, I'm going to punish her. And I'm going to tell the other Jewish institution, she's a thief, don't hire her. If that's my motivation, revenge, Lashon Hara. However, there's a Jewish law that says, Lifnei iver al titein michshol. Before the blind, do not place a stumbling block. That means you're not allowed to mislead people. Now, if they asked, is she an honest person? Can we hire her? And I lie, and I say, oh yeah, yeah, sure, hire her. Then I'm committing a sin. I'm putting a stumbling block before the blind. So what I did was, based on what Rabbi Zweig taught me, I said to the person, what job is she doing? And the answer was, she's going to be walking children, from one class to another. She'll be supervising them on the playground. So I go, will she be raising money or in charge of collecting monies? I said, no. I said, well, under those circumstances, I think it would be all right. Now, was that person smart enough to read between the lines? They hired her. Did she eventually retire from that position? Yeah, she did. But within 5 to 6 years, she retired. She wasn't fired. But the whole point is Lashon Hara. A lot of it has to do with what your motivation is. If your motivation is to, now also in the previous lecture, I said how Temple Menorah was victimized by unscrupulous rabbis who withheld information from me. When I was appointed to do due diligence, find out, did this employee really work there? What was his work ethic? And the rabbi said, I should have known. In fact, Stacy Stacy said, Stacy interviews, when she was a full-time physician, interviewed hundreds of people all the time. And it was a red flag, and I should have heard the red flag. The rabbi said, I never really worked with him. You have to talk to the assistant rabbi. So I thought that was really weird because this person worked there for 2 years in an important position. And I called the assistant rabbi, and the assistant rabbi said, he wanted me? I'm only here 6 months, and I only knew him for about 3 months, and I didn't really work with him. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Red flag, red flag, red flag. But there's something called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, where sometimes when you fire someone and you're to protect yourself, protect your institution, you agree not to talk bad about the person. So what you can legally say, and I know there's a couple of attorneys with us, one of the things that you can say is you just confirm their employment. No matter what question they ask, you say, so-and-so worked here, like me, from 1989 to 2027. Was he a good employee? Well, he did work here from 1989 to 27. Did he show up on time? But he goes, well, he did work here. I don't know to what extent you're allowed to share information, but now I had a conversation with a rabbi about this, and I said, are you allowed to also say, according to our agreement, I'm really not allowed to say anymore? And the answer is, that's Lashon Hara. Now you've stepped over the line because you basically told the other person, there's something bad, but I'm not allowed to tell you. It's like, what's your opinion of so-and-so? Oh, I know him very well, but I don't want to talk Lashon Hara. What did you just do? You just spoke Lashon Hara by not speaking Lashon Hara. You can't do that. That's Lashon Hara because you're making through your words. We got to do it more like Rabbi Lehrman. Change the subject and then move on, move away. Don't be a party to it. Let's get back to the share. So this is also very interesting study. So there's a book called Chovot HaLevavot, which means the longings of the heart. The great Rabbi Bachya Ibn Pakuda, in his seminal work on proper behavior, the duties of the heart, or the yearnings of the heart, relates that a pious man and his students once passed an extremely foul-smelling carcass of a dog. They were walking in public from one place to another, and the student said to him, how foul-smelling is this carcass? And he answered them, yes, but how white are its teeth? Obviously, the pious man wanted to train his disciples only to speak positively and to use refined language and see the good in everything. Yeah, a decomposing, carcass on the side of the road is going to smell bad, but he sure has white teeth. The duties of the heart concludes, it is wrong to speak in negative terms about a dead dog. How much more so should we be careful to not speak negatively about one's fellow human beings? And if it is commendable to praise the carcass of a dead dog for its white teeth, how much more so is an obligation to praise a human being who can think and reason and definitely do good things. Also, the Talmud advises that one should not utter a curse against another person, even if that person is causing them a lot of trouble. Yeah, so just to give you an attitude that your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, etc. Speak positively. The Talmud says that the reason the Torah describes the animals as being not clean from the story of Noah, einenu Torah, instead of impure, is in order to not to speak negatively about animals. A person should also use pure speech and should try not to speak negatively about anything, even animals. After all, every animal was created by God, and therefore every animal has a holy role to play in this world. People say, I hate ants, they're so disgusting. Ants play such an integral part in ecology. When something dies, they help it break down and become soil. Everything has an important role to play, and we shouldn't be condemning anything, any creature. So I want to just do a little disclaimer, especially while studying the danger of inappropriate words. Must be careful even when using those words for educational reasons. So I was preparing the next slide and I said, oh my God, people are going to say, this is exactly what Rabbi said not to do. The rabbi is using inappropriate words. How can the rabbi do that? He's a hypocrite. Well, what's my motivation? Is to teach you. If one refers to them the pursuit of Torah ideals, then no matter how prusk or grubbe the word might be on the street, within this framework is now commendable and even holy. So if you don't want to share some questionable material right now, turn off your speakers and rejoin me in a couple of minutes. I want to teach you something that was in the Talmud. There's a section of the Talmud which many recite as part of their daily prayers, where it refers to Mei Raglayim. It literally means water of the feet. And it was a euphemism that discussing you could wash herbs of the incense for the holy temple with urine. Mei Raglayim is normally translated as urine, water of the legs. According to the simple interpretation, it is obvious as to why this was not used to prepare an item for the use in the Holy Temple. It was a theoretical that urine is not impure, urine is not dirty, spiritually. It's a byproduct of your body. And if necessary, to make their point, you could even wash incense in preparation for the Holy Temple with urine. But the whole point is they didn't call it urine. They found a euphemism, a not bad word. And some say that Mei Raglayim is actually water from a certain wellspring called Raglayim, the water of the well of Raglayim, whose water was very potent and could have been used for this washing. Okay, but that's not the point. The point is that the majority of the rabbis say, no. They're talking about urine. When God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, he implanted in them the trait of bashfulness, of humility. This means that it became natural for the Jewish people to be ashamed of immoral behavior. This trait is a key protection against sin. One who is embarrassed by immoral behavior will not sin easily. When the evil impulse wants to convince a person to sin, he first convinces him to speak vulgar language. This removes the natural embarrassment one has for this behavior and inflames his desire for more serious sins. Now, regarding, Lashon Hara, I'm gonna stop the, I was asked last night in preparation for this class, and I'm pretty sure the person is here, was it Lashon Hara about Jeff Bezos' wife? I'm sorry, his girlfriend, or his fiance, that she was wearing a extremely revealing dress with her, I think it was her bra was visible. I Googled it and it really looked, so it's really interesting about bashfulness. Times have changed. Boy, have times changed. I remember when I had a sister who once had a bra strap showing, and she was so embarrassed she didn't leave the house for a day. She was so ashamed that her bra strap had shown. Or, I know people who, appeared in public at a speaking engagement and his zipper was down. And some people saw, he was standing in front of a crowd talking and his zipper was down. And oh my God, he never wanted to speak again in public. Bashfulness, but things have changed. Things have changed. I mean, you can appear in public with such inappropriate clothing. And the idea is that Lashon Hara, what do you do when something like this happens? So I sent out a quick, my rabbinic world, we're there's like 250 of us in my rabbinic association. And unfortunately, or fortunately, many of us are retired and they got nothing better to do. So I shot out a question to them late at night, and by 2:00 this afternoon, I think I had 4 or 5 responses. So do you remember when in the Super Bowl halftime show when Jackson had her what's his name? Not Bieber. Was it Justin Bieber? No, not Justin Bieber. The other guy.
Kimberly.
You're right. Thank you, Danny. He ripped off, and exposed her breast. We were talking about all these, accidents that occurred and what do we do afterwards? So if it was a genuine mistake, things happen. You know, you forget to pull up your zipper, but do you Lashon Hara it to death? Do you talk about it? Do you pass it on? And the answer is no, you really shouldn't. What we're talking about here is bashfulness and humility and being humble and blatant inappropriate behavior, because 25 years ago, I remember specifically, and one of the other rabbis mentioned it and he brought it up, Ted Kennedy's ex-wife appeared at a family event, I think it was a funeral, wearing a black bra under a white shirt, and everyone could see it. And it was a scandal. Look how things have changed. So let's go back to the teaching. And you can see the last line is, protection from sin is that we're supposed to be bashful and humble, and there's no concept of shame anymore. And it's revealed in language. Language is a form of lack of humility. Like when you can swear in public, it's not a good thing. This is Sefer Nidchei Yisrael by the Chafetz Chaim, by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. It's written in the holy books. This is what he teaches. It's written in the holy books that if one contaminates his speech with impure and despicable language, the words he speaks afterwards in holy matters, such as Kriyat Shema, the Amidah, prayers, it's all, you threw out the baby with the wash water. These words are not accepted in the Almighty's treasure unless one does tshuva. So it's sort of like, I don't know what the source is, but I remember a number of years ago, some actress was cursing in a movie, and the more old-fashioned man turned to her and said, "You kiss your mother with that mouth?" You know, she was spewing horrible, inappropriate words. And the guy, "You kiss your mother with that mouth? That mouth that just, is spewed such disgusting words? You kiss your mother with that mouth?" This can be compared to one who brings a present to a king in a filthy container. The gift will be thrown back in his face, and he will receive a punishment. The mitzvot we perform are presents to God. Our most precious container is our mouth, and the power of speech is its power that separates man from the animals. When a man sullies his mouth with unclean speech and then brings a gift to God by blessing him and praising with that mouth, this is not a blessing, but it's blasphemy. In the workplace, it is common in some workplaces that young men and women speak to each other in immodest ways. This can then lead to many other sins. A parent who has mercy on his children will ensure that his son and daughters do not work in such an environment. Even if his children are righteous, it is inevitable that he or she will be influenced by the people with whom they spend time. Now, you should know, I really do agree with this. And I can tell you it's one of the primary reasons why the ultra-Orthodox don't want their sons to go off to the Israeli army. First of all, in the army, for the first time in their life, they're going to be placed in a situation with women their own age. And they're wearing pants, they're wearing, blouses not buttoned properly, and there's not going to be supervision. A lot of times there's no adult supervision. When I say adult supervision, you're going to be left alone with an 18-year-old boy left in a room with an 18-year-old girl. And in the ultra-Orthodox world, not even the ultra-Orthodox, in the Orthodox world, that's not appropriate. But not only that, when the men are all together, 18-year-old guys, they're not studying Torah. They talk like 18-year-old boys, locker room talk. And that's one of the reasons why the ultra-Orthodox did not want their 18-year-olds going off to the army. So what did the Israeli army do? They formed a number of ultra-Orthodox battle units so that they'll be surrounded by young men who put on talis and tefillin every morning, who pray 3 times a day, that aren't going to talk inappropriately. So, okay, forgive me for taking a snack. Actually, I'm getting a sore throat, so I had hot coffee. I'm sorry we already did this one. We're almost finished. Marrying the redemption, very important concept. The Midrash teaches that the Jewish people merited to be redeemed from the bondage in Egypt for 3 reasons. The Israelites did not change their language, the way they spoke. They continued to speak Hebrew among themselves, and the words that they used were positive. The Ma'or VeHashemesh interprets this to mean that the Jewish people kept themselves aloof from the Egyptian immoral society and were careful to use only refined language. May we too merit to use only refined language in the seeing of the coming of the Messiah speedily in our days. Now, what I have here on the right is the 12 tribes of Jacob. And if you notice, Elitzur, look, number one, the prince of Reuben, Elitzur, which means my God is my rock. It's Hebrew. We kept our names. We wanted to make sure that we used our language for holy purposes. Shlumiel means God, peace is my God. Nachshon, Netanel, they're all Hebrew words that impart a positive connotation to the recipient, to the people that aren't so named. As we were talking earlier about Lashon Hara, what was the actual ritual? I know you're thinking the slide is out of place, but it's not. So what happens is when the person, Hashem spoke to Moshe and said, when a person is a mitzora, when he has leprosy, he shall be brought to the Kohen. The Kohen shall go forth out of the camp. The Kohen shall look, examine it, and if the lesion of tzara'at, leprosy, be healed in the tzara, in the leper, then shall the Kohen command to take for him who is to be cleansed 2 birds, and both of them have to be clean birds, and cedar, and wood, and scarlet, and hyssop. And then the Kohen shall command that one of the birds be killed in the earthen vessel over running live water. And for the living bird he shall take it and the cedar herb, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood, and the bird that was killed over the running water. The live bird is set free, like the feathers from the pillow. And the water of the remaining is spritzed on this really spiritual endeavor to cleanse a person from Lashon Hara, from the leprosy-induced psychosomatic disease. And here again, you can see a visual of it. And he shall sprinkle upon him that is to be cleansed from the tzara'at 7 times. He shall be pronounced tahor, clean, and shall let the living bird loose into an open field. And he that is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off all of his hair, and wash himself in water, that he may be clean. And after that he shall come into the camp. On the 7th day he shall shave off all of his hair, of his head, of his beard, of his eyebrows, even all the hair he shall shave off, and he shall wash his clothes, and he shall wash his flesh in water, and he shall be tahor. So the idea is that leprosy is a form of teaching you that you've caused the death of someone. In fact, it says in Pirkei Avot, "Hamalvin penei chaveiro eino chelik b'olam haba." If you caused a person's face to go white, it means you caused him embarrassment by what you said, and he got pale, the blood drained from his face, then guess what? You lost your place in the world to come. It's as if you killed him. Now, what happens is, this is the tikkun, fixing that which you broke, is like a new beginning. You know, babies don't have hair, and it's like, the whole idea is it's a new beginning. You've done your repentance, and now a new beginning. So that's the reason why this ritual is encompassed as such. The 10 rules of speech, actually, I'd like to come back to that. And talking about Gehinnom, everyone's familiar with Gehenna, which means hell. So in this wood carving, you can actually see, and I think I have another one on the next slide as well. This is an ancient wood carving. This is King David's citadel in the old city of Jerusalem. And this valley is called the Valley of Hinnom. And how do you say Valley of Hinnom? Gehinnom, Gehenna. And this over here is where the ancient Canaanites used to sacrifice their own children. And that's why it was considered, that name was appointed the name of hell, because that's such a hellish place where people would sacrifice their own children to their God. So that's where you get the idea of Gehenna. So why am I teaching it to you? The Talmud says the punishment in Gehenna is not only for those who speak vulgar language, but also for those who listen to it and don't object. If necessarily, one should put his fingers in his ears rather than hear vulgar language. The Midrash says that God hates 4 types of people. One of them is a person who speaks publicly about things that went on between himself and his spouse. If a blemished man If a man blemishes his mouth with obscene language, slander, and lies, he will be contaminated by God by having the loss of his progeny. It's a horrible thought, and we have a few more. Danny provided me with a number of slides, so I want to thank Danny for this. Don't state the obvious. The Talmud says that although everyone knows why the Kala enters the chuppah, why does a young couple get married? And the answer is to have children, and there's only one way to have children. So everyone knows why bride and groom are getting married. If one speaks about these matters openly, even if there was a decree in heaven that he, the speaker, should live for 70 good years, this will be rescinded and will be replaced with a bad decree. You don't state inappropriately what is obvious. And from the Tanakh, the Bible, Isaiah the prophet said, therefore over his youths, the Lord shall not rejoice, and on his orphans and his widows he shall not have mercy. For all of them are hypocrites and evildoers, and every mouth speaks obscene language. Despite all this, his anger has not turned away, and his hand is still outstretched. King Solomon wrote, the mouth of one who speaks strange words is like a deep pit, one hated by God, and they will fall therein. So yelling $1, cursing $2, screaming $5. But if this is actually my office, thank you, Danny, for taking the picture, and this is the swear box. I have the swear box on my desk, and basically it's very simple. You swear once, it's $1, and then in the same meeting, you swear a second time, it doubles, an additional $2. A third time, 4, then 8, then 16, and be surprised how quickly people stop swearing. I don't allow swearing in front of me. I'm going to tell you the truth. Ask Judy. When I stub my toe in the middle of the night, I don't swear. When I'm alone and someone, it happened once, but when someone cuts me off, I don't use inappropriate language. I don't. Even if I'm alone in the car, I don't do it. In the beginning of the Torah portion of Kedoshim, we are commanded, speak to the whole Israelite community and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. Our sages teach the Hebrew word kadosh, normally translated as holy, means a holy mouth to be distinct or separate. Thus, these words are actually a commandment to separate ourselves. Don't act like other people. Separate from what? Vulgar language. Have you ever noticed how the F word and SH-IT, like every other word out of people's mouth? It's, in fact, it's so funny because they defend themselves. It doesn't mean that anymore, Rabbi. Because yes, it does. Then why are you using it? Because you don't say copulate. You don't say copulate you. You don't say fecal matter. So why? Because it does mean it. You are swearing. That's why you're saying those things. The Torah forbids various behaviors and foods. At the same time, it does permit intimacy between a husband and wife and the consumption of kosher meat and wine. A glutton can still be a glutton even if they eat only kosher food. An alcoholic can still be an alcoholic if they drink only kosher wine. A married man is still lewd even if he is lewd with his own wife. It's proper behavior. One of the things, I think I say it at every single ketubah signing before a chuppah, where the ketubah is ridiculously in favor of the woman, the bride. So my rabbi taught me, he goes, yes, it's true. You're supposed to put your wife on a pedestal. You're supposed to treat your spouse like the queen. Because if you treat her like a queen, it means that you, her husband, you're the king. So treat your woman with respect in words and actions. Obviously, don't demean her, physically, but don't use negative words and don't be lewd with your own spouse. It's not appropriate in Judaism. I think this is the last one. God's presence is dependent on clean speech. The Torah says, God goes along in the midst of your camp to rescue you and deliver your enemies before you. Therefore, your camp shall be holy, so that he should not see anything unseemly among you. V'lo yireh v'cha ervat davar, and turn away from you. The words ervat davar can be read as ervat dibur, or vulgar speech. Thus, the Midrash interprets this verse to mean, it's from the book of Deuteronomy, that the verse to mean that the Jewish people speak in a vulgar way. If they do, God will not dwell amongst us. God does not like vulgar speech, even when alone. Yep, I'm sure this is the basis of my attitude when I learned it, 50 years ago. Unlike the sin of Lashon Hara, slander, which is only a sin if heard by other people, the sin of nivel peh, vulgar language, is a sin even if the words are heard by no one but the person who's speaking them. This is similar to the fact that one should not bare one's body, even if no one is watching, as God's presence is everywhere. Yeah. When we were in yeshiva, when I was in Lubavitch yeshiva and when I was at YU, I was surprised when it wasn't like that. And at the end of the hall were the men's showers in the dormitory at yeshiva. And when I was in Lubavitch yeshiva, every shower had walls. It was individual showers with a curtain. And the tradition was you brought your towel and you hung it up, or your robe. Then you showered, you dried yourself, then you put on your towel and your robe and you walked out, not naked. When I was at YU, I was really, really surprised that it was like the JCC. It was a large, I'd say, a room, 12 by 12, with like 12 faucets out of the wall. And in the yeshiva world, that wasn't acceptable, but at YU, in Reuben dormitory, I was really surprised about that. The prohibition and accompanying punishments against nivel peh also apply if one speaks it in a joking manner. As we were talking about, particular comedians, I don't find it humorous, and I've always had problems with it. I see that. So we're talking again. This is a picture, a modern picture, not a wood carving. This is literally Gay Hinnom. If you look to the left, the wall of the old city is up this hill to the left, and this is the valley of Hinnom. Based on these verses, the Talmud lists the following punishments for the sin of speaking vulgar language: harsh decrees initiated against the Jewish people. Young Jewish men die. Orphans and widows cry out and no one helps them. One is sent to the nethermost levels of Gehinnom. The Maharal of Prague explains that the power of speech is what distinguishes man from animal. Vayhi ha'adam lenefesh. When man was created, it says that man was created lenefesh chaya, a living animal. But it also can mean an animal that speaks. All the punishments listed above are therefore appropriate as they represent the negation of one's very humanity. And that's what we have to strive for, to being menschlich. Nachmanides' last point: it's possible for a person to be disgusting with the permission of the Torah. Huh? What? The Torah demands that we go beyond the parameters and live a life that is truly distinguished and uplifted. The Talmud speaks very harshly about one who speaks in a vulgar way. As words leave your mouth, they make an imprint on your mind and heart. A crude person can become more refined if he improves the way he speaks. Shmirat HaLashon, guarding one's tongue, is considered one of the first steps that need to be taken before correcting more serious character flaws. Now, that being said, I want to end with another. I'm pretty sure I taught it 2 weeks ago. And in Leviticus chapter 18, it says, do not put a stumbling block before the blind, and do not curse the deaf. Now, putting a stumbling block before the blind makes perfect sense, because if I put a chair in front of a blind person, they're going to fall and get hurt. Makes perfect sense, big sin. But why is there sin about cursing the deaf? If he's walking away from me and I curse him, he can't hear and he can't read my lips. It doesn't hurt him because he didn't hear it. So why am I not allowed to curse the deaf? And the answer is because of the damage it does to me, the person who speaks it. So the famous teaching goes to the next level, and I emphasize this part of it. The human body was created by God that all energies go into our body. So, for example, light energy comes into our eyes. Sound energy comes into our ears. olfactory particles go into our nose, taste, etc. Everything comes into our body. The only thing we project are words. The only energy that we project, we can't, we're not Superman. We don't shoot out laser beams. The only energy that comes out of our body, the only energy we produce are words. So if our spiritual energy, we mold the words. Literally, speech is when we pass wind over our vocal cords, and using the structures of our teeth, our lips, our tongue, we form words out of them, syllables and consonants. So the whole idea is if we take all of that spiritual energy and we make negative energy, we project it, then it does us damage. And that's why Lashon Hara is such a serious sin. And you know why it's a serious sin? Shabbat comes once a week. Okay? Keeping kosher 4 or 5 times a day. Why? Because you definitely eat 3 meals and 2 snacks. So you could be eating treif maximum 5 times a day. Right? How many times a day can you talk Lashon Hara? And the answer is, the average person, about 16 hours. Over and over and over and over and over again. And that's why Lashon Hara is so serious. You could be committing it 100 times a day. Now, in modern times, the question is, what about if you write it, Lashon Hara? What happens if you text it, Lashon Hara? What happens if you make a video, Lashon Hara? It's Lashon Hara. So, very important concept. So we've got a lot to study and endeavor to make ourselves better, because remember, I think it was slide 5, that's how we'll bring the redemption and the bringing of the Messiah speedily in our days, when we learn to show our love and compassion and speak nicely one to another. I think there was a question, someone's hand was up, and it seems to have lost it. Let's see. Does Lashon Hara apply to talking about non-Jews? And the answer is yes. Just wondering if or why not any of the 10 commandments imply not talking about badly Lashon Hara. So Steve asked that question, and the answer is there are. So for example, respecting your mother and your father is one of the ways is by talking appropriately to them with respect and love and endearment. Loving, having one God and worshiping only one God is talking properly about God. So, excellent questions. Any other questions? Most of you are muted. So, by the way, I got a lot of people. We're going to probably want to Danny, make sure that we have the link, because a lot of people apparently went to the film festival tonight. So that's why they're not online with us. Any questions for me? Great. I need a topic for next week. If you can think of one, do your best to shout it out to me, and I'll do my best to meet your needs. All right, Chevra. Danny, thank you for all your help.
I have one
For
question.
teaching.
Oh, there is a question?
Yes. What about Hamas? Can we talk about them badly?
So what's your motivation? Is it to warn people, to inform them the dangers? Then you're allowed.
Yes.
Otherwise, if there's some other motivation, then you're doing yourself harm. So, the power of positive thinking. Norman Vincent Peale in the 1920s. I read the book when I was 17 years old. One of the best books I ever read. I think I reread it when I was in my late 40s. In fact, it's behind the Israeli flag. I have a bookcase there. I'm pretty sure that's where I have my secular books. I wouldn't be surprised. He also wrote another book, How to Win and Influence People, how to be positive and win over people. So the idea is that when we talk negatively about Hamas, all this negativity affects us. It's bad. It's bad vibe. It's bad energy. And the idea is that we have to strive to use only positive. Look at the Torah. Instead of saying, take the clean animals and take the dirty animals. No, they said, take the clean and the ones that aren't clean. There's a nuance that we're trying to be positive,
Right.
Otherwise we're like them. I mean, you know, do you ever hear them talk about us? Let's
Rabbi,
like them. Yes, Sarita.
I don't feel that they are like I am like them at all, never in my life. But I cannot refrain myself from thinking about them and speaking about them when I'm mentioning something with this same feeling that I had when my mother spoke about the Nazis or what happened in the concentration camps and what the atrocities that have happened. I cannot control myself, Rabbi, so maybe I'm sinning, but that's the way I feel that if
So, you know, it's interesting because from 1945 well into the mid 1980s, for about 40 years, Holocaust survivors had a culture of not talking about it. And, you know, people would say, it's cathartic, talk about it, get it out. And then by the late 1980s, things started to change. And was it cathartic to get it out? I don't know, but I can tell you, apparently, that it was very useful. And if your motivation, I can tell you, I can tell you that I had a bad period with a particular series of rabbis. And whenever people would come to me and try to talk to me, like I would lose my temper. And talking about it just made me angrier and angrier because they weren't going to change their way. They wronged me. And just talking about it would, and then I'd come home and I'd wake up, my jaw would hurt. And the idea was that talking about it did not make me better. And that's a good example of how a lot of times we think that we think that, you know, we're talking bad and expressing evil. Is it cathartic? Is it going to make you feel better? Or is it going to make you feel worse? So it's a very thin line and we have to be careful. However, if you're talking about it to enable you to deal with it, like to a therapist, or if you're talking it with friends, or you're doing it to educate people the dangers of Nazism, if you're talking about it to warn people about the dangers of fanatic Islamic terrorism, then it's not Lashon Hara. But still, you gotta conceptualize your motivation and make sure that it's holy and pure. You're doing it because you want to teach a generation of children what happens if we don't confront Nazism. We have to teach them what happens if we don't confront fundamentalist Islamic anti-Zionists. But otherwise, you got to be careful. Well, Chevra, I hope you enjoyed class.
Yes, we did, Rabbi.
And God willing, we'll see you tomorrow morning in shul. And tomorrow, Wednesdays, I have a Bible class at noon. So God willing, we'll all have a Bible class tomorrow. And then, of course, everything else that goes on. Oh, don't forget, this Shabbos, the Cholent cook-off. Shabbat morning, I'm making 2 cholents.
Are you cooking?
What?
Are you cooking or you're just in the meshkia?
I'm cooking 2 different cholents. And if anyone wants to compete, all you have to do is bring the ingredients on Friday. I or Rabbi Josh will check them, and then first place is $100, second place is $75, third place is $50. And bragging rights for an entire year. All right.
We really
Thank you,
enjoyed it.
Rabbi.
Good night,
Lila
everyone.
Tov, everyone. Lila Tov.
Thank you. Right, that's all.